Eliminator RC presents RCTV, your radio-controlled authority. Brought to you in part by RC Pit Stop, bringing the best of RC to BC since 1989. And John's Hobbies, Toronto's local hobby store. With your host, Nick Rack.
Welcome to RCTV. On this week's episode of RCTV, we're going to be heading out to a fantastic heli event in Markham. Also, a cool bolt engineer. He's built a scale tugboat. Wait till you see this, folks, out in BC. Then we're going to be heading back over to Winnipeg to see some off-road racing. But first, the Guru of B.I.M.B.O. Check it out.
We're here with Ivan Pedigrew today. We're going to discuss the airplane he's got in front of him, which he's built from plans, and he's a very big scratch builder on the west coast here. What can you tell us about this aircraft?
This plane is called the Angel, and it is built for operating out of small rough airstrips in the jungles of the Amazon or in Alaska. It was designed by a man called Carl Mortensen. Over 20 years ago, he brought one out here and flew it at the Abbotsford Air Show and actually took me for a ride in it. It's got a little three-view drawing from him of the outline, and I designed the airframe and the basics of it myself. Developed the technology so much with brushless motors and fast charge batteries that give an enormous amount of power. So it flies satisfactorily.
Oh my gosh.
And that's a double weight battery to what I need really.
Are you sure you put wood in this?
Yeah.
This is very light.
The thing about light planes, they're wonderful when the wind is calm, but they're a bit of a handful when it's blowing.
The Wright brothers may not have been the first people to actually get airborne. If the Kiwis have anything to say about it, Ivan knows the story on this one.
I myself am from New Zealand, and when my mother was about 8 years old, she lived on a farm quite close to a fellow who was known throughout the country for his experiments in all kinds of things. Then he got into wanting to make a flying machine, and this is his plane, and in many ways it was very advanced for its time. The first planes were biplanes, and they went to triplanes. He had a monoplane, which all new planes, modern planes are. He had it right. The engine configuration was very advanced because he had the propeller mounted onto the engine, acting as a flywheel, as modern light aircraft do. And instead of having wing warp with a series of wires to twist the wing, as the early planes had, he had ailerons. And so he was very advanced for his time. The main thing I've changed is the undercarriage. I put the nose wheel further forward. It would be very unstable on the ground. And it's quite difficult to fly in a crosswind because of this high fin up here, but at the same time it makes it very stable in the air. If you get in a side slip, the air stops it slipping here, and the weight of the thing, it just corrects itself. And it's very, very easy to fly.
I looked at some aircraft you had yesterday at the flying pond, several flying boats.
Yes.
And you have, you know, all the background stories on those as well.
Yes. One that was just a little scratch-built pond hopper, we call them, or mine I call it the Seagull. And it's just a sport flying plane. It's one I've been flying for about 15 years. The Short Sunderland, which was a patrol aircraft looking for submarines and chasing submarines in the Atlantic, was developed from a passenger plane that came out in the late 30s, the four-engine Empire flying boats. After the war, the Short company started developing more passenger planes along the same lines. They used a similar wing, bigger engines each time a different model came out. The first one they made after the war was called the Sandringham, and then the final one they made was the Solent, and that was the one I mentioned. And I had an interest in them because I used to see these as a small boy when I was growing up in New Zealand. They flew them between New Zealand and Australia before there were land planes, passenger planes that could fly that distance. One I had was a replica of the ones flown by TEAL, T-E-A-L, which was Tasman Empire Airways Limited. It later became National Airways Corporation of New Zealand, and now it's part of Air New Zealand.
I also hear that there are a bunch of guys in Britain that have used your plans and have a small little club.
Oh yes, I should have the right t-shirt on for that. They call themselves the B.I.M.B.Os, which is a bit of a laugh to us. But the British B.I.M.B.O stands for British Ivan Model Builders Oganization, because there aren't readily made designs for this type of plane. Not many planes are available. So as I've developed these models over the years, I've drawn up the plans and made them available. And quite a few in England and Britain have built models, so they formed their own organization, and the last 2 years they've had a flying like ours on a smaller scale with just the electric models they built from my plans.
We'd like to thank Ivan Pedigrew for having us out today at the Fairfield Flying Field. He's telling us all about his passion for this hobby and the models he's built and all the stories behind them. It was an awesome time. Thanks, and we'll see you later.